All right, everybody in podcast land, welcome to Ad Work Not Worries, the number one podcast discussing the construction industry, the real estate investment industry, and business, life, etc. Adding Work Not Worries, the number one podcast in the U.S. featuring a guy wearing black glasses, this specific coat with a black shirt underneath on a Wednesday. Podcast with those credentials, we are the number one in the U.S. and we appreciate our audience. Anyone who's been listening to the podcast, want to let you know, really appreciate you. If you're getting anything from the podcast, any morsel, any tidbit, anything you've learned, we'd really appreciate if you would take the time and, number one, subscribe. Number two, share with any of your friends who you think might also get a little info from the podcast. And rate us. I say it every podcast. I only say it because we're trying to jump in the ranks, and the only way to jump in the ranks is if we get ratings, we get reviews, and we get subscribers. If you can help us out with that, if you've been listening to the podcast, please help us out with that. That's it. That was quick, short. Today, Little Wednesday Wisdom. I spent a little time on this one because it's true to me, near and dear to my heart. And it's something that I've dealt with my whole career and honestly still deal with, and I'm still refining. And I wrote down some talking points. Specialization and staying in your lane and focusing on your core competency and what it is that you want to specialize in and that you're the master of. We've all heard the jack of all trades, master of none. I dealt with that a lot early in my career. And honestly, I probably lost a lot of time not going deep into one specific area, which specifically later on I decided I'm going to be a custom home builder and flip that into real estate investment. So it really struck a chord with me, and I wrote down basically 10 points on why it is important to specialize. 10 reasons why specialization, staying in your lane, and choosing your path and sticking to it with laser beam focus and moving forward in that path is key to a successful business, kind of in any realm, but especially in the construction trades, and especially with, if you're doing any investment, real estate investment, etc. Little backstory, and I know I've discussed my history in a previous episode, how I got into the trades, started doing what I was doing, grew and started to build the homes that I'm building, and then kind of parlayed that into real estate investment. So if you haven't heard that, go back to that episode. You might get a little more info on my backstory. But digging a little deeper, I mentioned in that story when I first got licensed and went legit, I had a tile company and granite fabrication company as well as a building company. And really, because in those early years, it was eat what you kill, my mentality was always the more the better. I didn't have the mentality that I have today, that the grass is greener on the side that you water. It's more, let's water everything and just hope the grass grows everywhere, which was unrealistic. Had a tile company, had that granite fab company, had a building company. Even at one time, my buddy was doing concrete and foundations and slab work, and that seemed really appealing to me. Just, I don't know why, the life of a concrete company owner always just had this like mystic appeal to me. Maybe there's something like rough, rugged, and raw that I thought was cool. I parlayed into that, and for a few months changed up my logo and branding to say I also do concrete and foundations as being a builder. So running multiple things, but none of them really catching major traction and propelling me to the next level. And obviously, because, I'm doing 2, 3, 4 different businesses kind of within the same realm, but not going deep on any of them, just trying to score whatever work I could get. How do you brand that? How do you market that? How do you grow that? When you're just dabbling here, there, and the other. I mean, no one wants to, have a specific medical ailment and go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, I don't know, I dabble in internal medicine and knees and, neurology, and I know a little bit of everything. So I hope I could figure out what's going on. Like, no, they want to say, I have a pain in my shoulder and I want to go to the doctor that can diagnose exactly what's going on because he's dealt with people with pain in their shoulders 579 times in the past month because that's what he does specifically. That's always in higher demand. So along that vein, staying in your lane, specializing, that's the wisdom of today that I wrote down 10 points. I want to talk about these points and why they matter. Number one, first, if you stay in your lane and decide you're going to be the expert and specialize in a field, it allows you to develop. So number one is your development of your expertise. Specializing allows you to go deep. When you decide I am X, you can then fully immerse yourself in the world of X or whatever you're doing. And in doing so, you're going to find other like-minded people. You're going to start understanding the nuances of that specialty in that industry. And in knowing the nuances of that specialty in that industry, you're going to see the inefficiencies of those industries. And you're going to know where you could have a competitive advantage because you're the expert in that field. Like, no, having that nuance sets you far and apart from your competitors because let's say you're the master of garage epoxy coatings. Well, when someone brings you into their home to give you a proposal for their garage epoxy coating, if someone comes in and says, well, I do pavers and I do concrete and I do some garage coatings and I do this and I do that, and they say, well, I have this one specific question about where the 6-inch curb in my garage meets the slab and there's this joint and how would you treat that? And the guy that's like jack of all is, well, haven't ran into that specific scenario. No, because he hasn't ran into that specific scenario because he's doing a tidbit of this, a morsel of that, a little of this, and maybe he's done a handful of these garage coatings in addition to the dozens of other random trades he's doing. But the guy that does just garage coatings 3 times a day on a regular basis knows all the nuance, has experienced and encountered what that person's asking for a dozen times. He's going to know the answer to that quickly. Guess what that's going to get him? He's going to close the sale. His expertise is in that field, and therefore he can demand a premium. So specializing allows you to develop your expertise. 2, so the market demands specialization these days. So number 2, I wrote the market demand. Like, if you think about it, going back to the surgical reference, when you're a general practitioner as a doctor, you command a very, very robust, nice salary. However, do you think they're making nearly as much as the cardiac surgeon or the orthopedic surgeon or, name the specialization? No. The market craves and demands specialization. People, consumers, companies, whether you're a tradesman that you want to appeal to a company and get the benefit of the highest possible salary or hourly rate, or you're a company who wants to appeal to a consumer, the market craves and demands specialization. So choosing your path and your specialty, going deep on it, understanding the nuance, is going to make you immediately a market leader and very attractive to potential customers and to potential companies. 3, quality over quantity. And I've talked about this in previous episodes. If you can focus on your niche, being the best at your niche, you obviously can demand a much higher premium in the market. When you know that your stonemason who's doing a dry stacked stone wall for you is going to install that perfectly. You're not gonna, on a dry stack, if you don't know what a dry stack is, it's when you're stacking stone veneer, interior, exterior, whatever it may be, and you're chiseling each piece so you can get them tight together without grout joints. Typically you want those to be like 1/8 of an inch tight so they look like they're just stacked like Tetris pieces without grout. It's a specific aesthetic. When you know your stonemason can achieve that and you are talking to another stonemason to get a competitive bid and all you've seen them do is composite lightweight stone with fat grout joints that are 1/2 inch, you're going to be willing to pay the stonemason that you know can give you the result you're trying to achieve a lot more of a premium than the guy who doesn't and hasn't done that. So if you can provide top quality, you are going to be a market leader, you're going to appeal to the consumer, and you're going to demand a premium. So, and the only way to provide that type of quality is if you go deep into your field, because you have to understand, again, the small details, the little things you can do to be at an advantage over your competitors from a quality perspective, from an efficiency perspective. So that's 3. 4, and this is really important, because this is what's going to set you apart from your competitors as well. It allows innovative thinking. When you specialize in a field and understand again, I've said nuance a million times, but it's such a key word in this episode is nuance, because being a specialist just means that you've gone deep and you understand things that others don't about your field and about your niche. You can then start to think outside of the box. It's like when you're playing piano and you initially start off and you're just learning your scales, and you might learn a few technical classical pieces, and then you might learn chord progressions, and these are all things that are nice, but the truly great jazz musicians or composers that can take their skill set, think outside the box, and change that and morph that into something that someone's never heard before, a chord thrown in that shouldn't belong there but that sounds just beautiful. If anyone's into music, if you ever listen to What a Wonderful World, like, sorry to go off on a tangent about piano, but when you're talking like jazz music, typically music has progressions, and the progressions could be like, this may be way in the weeds and too much for anybody, but it's, if you're playing chords and your chord progression in any given key is like 2-5-1 or 6-2-5-1, that means you're playing chords within those keys, and there's different chords you can play in certain progressions, and typically all music is based on these progressions. Well, in What a Wonderful World, which is one of the greatest songs of all time, it's a specific chord progression, and right in the middle of the song, he throws in a D flat chord, which is not a chord that's even in the key he's playing or intuitive to the progression he's playing. It's a completely random chord. But when you hear the D flat, and if I was to play the song and you hear the D flat at the moment the D flat comes in, it transcends you to a different world. And the reason it does is because he's taking a risk and he understands what he's doing, because he understands the fundamentals that allows him to go cowboy. He hits the D flat and it transcends you, and you're just taken to a different place. You can do that within your specialty, whatever it may be, if you understand the fundamentals, the small details, and have done it a million times. You can then riff and go cowboy and go jazz on it. So, but the only way you can do that is if you are deeply specializing and deep into the field and understand the nuance. You can't do that if you're just dabbling, because that D flat is going to fall on its face and sound like shit, because you're not going to hit the D flat. You're going to go C sharp and fuck everyone's eardrums up. So, innovative thinking. That's number 4. Number 5, you can build a strong personal brand. And this is something that I only learned at recently. Branding wasn't my number one focus, and it has, as of late, become my number one focus. And this rings near and dear to my heart, because knowing that I moved from a major metropolitan area to a much smaller town. In the major metropolitan, there was so much competition and so much quality competition and a different type of consumer. However, there was a lot of money there and a lot of work there in the building trades. And I always confuse that with, this is where the money is at, this is where the work's at. I didn't really focus on my brand because I was so busy and I had relationships with specific architects and specific designers, and I was always pretty busy. So I never focused on the brand. and nor did I think about like where within those major markets I would focus my marketing or brand. It just wasn't even a thought to me. And then when I moved to a smaller town, I had a huge concern about like reinventing myself, forming a new company. How successful could it be when your market went from 10 million people to 150,000? It just kind of didn't make sense to me, and I didn't think I could establish myself full-time in that market, that I had to keep my foot in the door in the other market. However, I quickly realized when I got to the smaller market and started to focus on building brand in my specialty, which is high-end luxury homes, that building a brand is, number one, not a hard thing to do when you're focused on a specific niche, but also really important, especially in a smaller market, because it's like hyper localized and it's easy to brand and market to that whole market. So that was kind of an aside, but something I learned. And being a specialist, you're able to build a strong brand because you're building a brand around one thing. So going back to the garage epoxy coating company, when you're building a brand, and every single day you're able to post a new picture and video, etc., about the new epoxy coating and the details of what you did and the garage that it was in and the purpose that it's serving, and go deep on that, it resonates with people, and they'll take that, they'll share that, they'll save that, they'll start to realize you're the leader in that specific category, and it will ingrain you in that hyper localized or whatever market you're marketing to. So the branding possibilities as a specialist are far and away better than not being a specialist. How do you brand? I'm a concrete slab deck building, garage coating, window installer. That's a tough one. That's a real tough one. Think about that. Okay, next, your networking opportunities. So when you engage deeply in a subject or deeply in a field, people start to think of you as a thought leader or as like the person to go to for information about that field. And they're going to want to talk with you. They're going to want to network with you. You're going to get this synergy amongst other trades because other specialists in other fields are going to want to form networks with specialists in the fields that they're not in. And this especially rings true for someone like me who's a general contractor wanting to network with other subcontractors that are highly specialized in their field, especially building like luxury homes. I need specialists in every field that can perform at the top of their craft. And I want to know those people and network with those people. And oftentimes what I do is I'll hear about, this person did this job that turned out amazing, or this person did this thing, and you really have to see it. And that network effect starts to happen because other specialists respect specialists. So when my cabinet installer, who's just amazing, and again, can cope a cabinet to the wall 1/32 of an inch, where you never have to have a scribe and you can only fit a piece of paper, it just looks so dialed. When that guy who has a ton of respect for what he does and cares about quality sees another sub-trade in the field that cares as much and knows as much and has gone deep like he has in his craft, they will reach out to that person and want to connect and bring them into their network. And then they'll talk to me about that person and say, you have to go talk to Ryan, the tile guy. You should have seen what he did. You should have seen how he mitered the corners on this last job. I mean, it was just amazing. The grout joint was consistent all the way down, not wavy at all. He polished every piece. And little stuff like that, highly specialized, draws people attention, and it allows you to expand your market exponentially. This is a little aside from the business aspect, but it fulfilling your purpose and passion. When you go deep on something, there is a definite metaphysical and artistic aspect to that really is going to make you feel a lot better than just out there in the grind trying to figure it out on a day-to-day basis and doing a little of this, doing a little of that. the handyman, there's a definite need and there's a definite place. And I think, honestly, I think it's a great business because there's not enough people doing it, and handymans are in high demand. But it's tough to like find your Zen state, like I discussed in past episodes. You know, doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, running here, running there, Home Depot to grab a little thing because you got to fix a door, and you know, as opposed to the person who is the master of skip trowel or the master of old world hand texture drywall that, you know, is able to show up at a job site, get out his tools, chop, like mix his mud, start working on a canvas, which is the wall to him, you know, smearing the mud on the wall, gently applying the texture, waiting for it to dry, sanding, getting in this Zen state, seeing the end result, knowing that it's going to turn out perfect every time because you've spent the 10,000 hours or whatever it takes to become the master of your trade. Like, there's something really fulfilling in that. And just in general, there's something really fulfilling about going deep into any field, whether it's work or leisure. So the fulfillment you're going to get in focusing on your core competency and going deep and specializing is far and away more than if you're just, again, jack of all, master of none. It's just not as pleasing to the soul. Like, that's a little more philosophical, but I really believe that. Now, number 8, there's the learning curve. So when you decide, you're not going to decide, I am this, I'm specializing in it, and therefore I'm just now the specialist. It doesn't work like that. But it also doesn't allow you to become the specialist and learn the nuance and learn the niche details if you don't make the jump and decision to specialize. So until you're able to, like, competent, like, or until you're able to, like, cognizantly make the decision that you're going to specialize, you don't start your journey. Like that, there's a jump off point, and the jump off point is you have to choose. You have to choose, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to live. I'm going to eat, breathe, and sleep my specialty. And then once you do that, your learning curve goes from here, where I'm showing like a gentle upward slope, to exponential, because you're now deep in a subject, and you're embodying all of the small details and all of the energy from your network and all of you know, what people have done in the past that you can pull and draw from to enhance what you're doing, because you've decided to specialize. Like, now you're on a, you know, 2-to-1 slope upwards, and you can't do that unless you decide to specialize. 9, adapting to change. This is really key because our industry, obviously, as of late, is changing dramatically, but historically is also a very dynamic field. Now, for so many reasons that I don't even think I need to state, who do you think is going to adapt to change better than, or in a scenario where, you know, you're the foundation contractor and a new technology arises, or a new way to set steel, or a new way to tie steel, or a new concrete mix, or a new way to set forms that might increase your efficiency by 50%. If you're a person that dabbles and you have a bunch of old 2x12s that after every job you clean off and rub with diesel fuel to make sure they don't rot, and you kind of bring those back to the job whenever you need them, but you're only doing foundations once a month because you're busy doing other things, you're not going to be the one who's deep in the field, who goes to a trade show, or who sees something new on socials that people are using, or that finds something online or in something they're reading about a new product where you can snap these forms together and they click into place, and it's going to save you. You're going to do the same foundation forming in a third of the time, but you're going to have to invest a little money. You're not going to do that calculation, you're not going to understand that, and you're not going to market that to your clients, which would be, builders typically if you're a foundation contractor, you're going to keep doing it the same old way. And over time, what's going to happen, because you're not adapting to that change and you're not deep in this field, people are going to be doing work at, a 20% discount that from what you're charging, because you're doing it the old school way. They're also going to do it twice as fast because of these new systems and things they can implement. And they're going to make more of a margin than you at the same time. So you're going to be what? Like outcompete. You're just not going to be a viable market player because you're not adapting to the change, because you haven't decided to specialize and be on the forefront of the new technologies, trends, etc. Specialization so you can adapt to change is critical. Now, 10, and final point, long-term vision. It's incredibly important that you project what it is you want to do, where it is you want to be, and how you want to do it. If you don't specialize and you don't have laser beam focus on what it is you're doing, it's impossible to have a vision and have a goal long term. The only way to have a vision and have a goal is to know what it is you're doing. And if you're day to day discombobulated by the grind or by the 10 things you have to think about and that you're doing, you can't set a goal and a focus for yourself. When you're highly specialized, you can, because you can say, I'm the garage coating guy, and this year I did 115 garage coatings, and I know how I can market and change my efficiencies and change my staff, and I know my profit margins, and I know next year I want to do 182. When you're the guy doing electrical wiring, and you know that last year you did 10 houses with a 2-man crew and you know that if you bring on 2 more, next year you can do 14 houses, and if you bring on the right person, you might be a little more efficient, or if you change your strategy because you know that 40% of your job is crawling and pulling wire, and if you get a person that just does that as opposed to a journeyman where both of you meet at the job site and are bitching to the other person about who's going to crawl today, if you had someone just crawling and doing labor, that you could wire these houses X faster, and that'll lead to not only a faster project completion, but allowing you to bring on more projects and allowing you to be more profitable on the projects you're on. You don't know that if you're doing 20 different things. You don't know that if you're the plumber that says, if I tweak this little thing in what I'm doing, and I can drill this way and run my ABS pipes and my copper or PEX or whatever it is you're doing in this fashion, next year I'm able to project that I can save this much in material costs because of my efficiencies, and I can do, X, Y, Z. These are all examples of just like, you can plan and you can have a long-term vision when you specialize, but that's the only time you can do it. You can't do it if you have too many things going on. You'll be too confused. Your vision will be lacking. And when your vision is lacking and you don't have a clear objective, you're not going to be successful in achieving the goals and vision. So that's my vibe for today. Go deep, specialize, choose your lane, get in it, and put the pedal to the metal and figure out all the nuanced details. That's the Wednesday wisdom I'm dropping. I'm going to go through the 10 points again real quick. Number 1, it allows you to develop your expertise. That is key. You can do that when you specialize. Number 2, you'll be in more demand for the market, far and away. Number 3, it'll allow you to focus on your quality over the quantity of projects. And in focusing on the quality, you're going to demand a higher premium in the market. Number 4, allows innovative thinking. You can't go jazz if you don't know the fundamentals. You don't know your scales, you don't know your chords, you don't understand chord progressions, you're never going to be playing like, Linus and Lucy from Charlie Brown Christmas or something like that. Like, you just can't. You got to know the fundamentals. It allows you to build a strong personal brand. That's number 5. You can only brand if you're branding something specific to the market that people understand. People don't understand, hey, my brand is I could do this, that, or the other kind of well. That's not a brand. 6, networking opportunities, craftsmen, artisans, people at the apex and peak of their field want to work with the same type people. People run in flocks, and they want like-minded. And the guys that are at the top and performing the best, doing the best work, they don't want to hang out with the hacks. 7, fulfilling your passion. Simple. Go deep. Be the artisan. You're going to feel so much more fulfilled at the end of the day for the product you're providing to the market. 8, the learning curve. Obviously, when you decide to go deep, you could really take that and start to grow exponentially your knowledge base. Because when you pinpoint, if I said tomorrow, I want to learn more, I don't know anything about neuroscience. If I said today, I want to learn more about neuroscience, I would start reading a dozen books about neuroscience. I wouldn't be a neuroscientist, but I'm going to learn at a lot faster of a rate than if I, pick up Neuroscience for Dummies at the bookstore once, read half of it during the year, and then go back to reading, this book about the Apaches and this book about the anxious generation and this book about finance and this book about, once you make the choice, your learning curve increases dramatically. Allows you to adapt to change in a ever-changing industry. If you're at the forefront of your field and you're specializing, you will understand when the shifts and the trends in the industry are changing and happening, and you'll be able to capitalize on that because you're entrenched in that field. And then 10, again, long-term vision. You can only plan if you are able to identify what it is you're planning to do. And if you're confused and have a million things going on, you cannot have a long-term vision. That's the Wednesday wisdom. Go deep, specialize, take that shit to the moon. Thanks, everybody.